we'll move on to our final speaker for this meeting. And we went over to Northern Ireland for Adele, and now we're going to go even further. So we're going to go over to Toronto in Canada. And our next speaker is Jianhong Wu, who's at York University, which is in the northern part of Toronto, and also part of a very active and effective group which is at the Fields Institute, also in Toronto. One of the great things about having Zoom meetings, of course, is that we can be truly international, you know, having speakers from all over the world, which is what we've been doing. So Yang Hong is going to tell us about package-borne transmission.
Thank you, Chris. Maybe I can share my screen. All right, so Chris, you have touched two issues that I want to start with, and I just realized that COVID-19, excuse me, it's not only emphasized the need of further research on One Health, but create another issue of the need of creating One Zoom. And I've been running two conferences, a conference in Beijing and your conference, and between the end of the early morning in Beijing and the beginning of your morning session, so excuse me. So there are only a few hours of windows for sleep. So I have to apologize that I did not fully participate in this conference because of this. And you also mentioned that there is a similar national network that was put together in February of last year by the Fields Institute and funded by the Canadian Institute of Health Research. It was started with the COVID-19 Rapid Response Dissemination Task Force, and has been growing and expanding to now to a larger network titled Mathematics for Public Health. And it has support from the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council of Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada. And it's being supported by 4 national research centers, the ARMS in the Atlantic region, the Center for the CIM in the Quebec, the French part of country, and PIMS from the Pacific, and then the Fields Institute in the center. So we're really looking forward to collaborate and help support from all of you. And I want to thank Chris again for mentioning this and for supporting this Canadian national effort. So I'm not going to talk about the results of this task force and this national network. Actually, I don't have any results today to report. I would really like to bring up the issues of foodborne and the package-borne transmission of COVID-19 and the relevant food safety issue. The choice of the topic was actually motivated by an invitation from the Shanghai Maritime University in China. The Faculty of Science wanted to have a special panel to really see how the mathematical modeling can inform their major concentration of research of the university. That's more of port management. And at the time, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, it's the news from World Cargo News that starting in November, China added cold chain disinfection requirements. And there's a huge intervention implemented in all the airport and the port for managing the issues of potentially importing the COVID-19 cases from the sea and from the air. So I decided I want to talk about this issue and understand this is still it's not risk, it's a low risk events with substantial economic costs. And I'm trying to proposed approach and some of the frameworks that we have been developing to understand mechanistically the co-feeding transmission of vector-borne diseases. So again, I will not have results. I will collect all the relevant evidence and the discussion about the lack of evidence and some of the sort we think this can move forward. So there are some observations about the potential of COVID-19 transmissions through frozen foods, packaging materials, and storage environments. In early July of 2020, there are a few official research reports, and to report that some of the researchers were able to detect the SARS-CoV covariance 2 on the frozen foods, including related packaged materials and storage environments. And in addition, 2 were emerging outbreak episodes in the port city and were deemed to be limited to contaminate food sources. So the importation, the number of cases thought to be initially triggered this outbreak were very small, but it effectively locked down the whole port city of Qingdao and effectively led the government to test the entire city within 4 days. So the social economics of this kind of real risk events is enormous. Also, according to some early studies, there are certain steps and stages during the farm to table process that could make food workers particularly vulnerable to contracting the coronavirus, especially by exposing them to some potentially yield workers and contaminated environments. Some studies have also identified potential weakness in the food cold chain and food supply chain, since the virus can survive under the refrigerating or freezing conditions on a variety of foods, especially like meat, the poultry, fish, and other seafoods. So those are the limited evidence collected from the early study and early, the COVID-19 time zone is really last year. On that hand, from more developed countries, then these have been regarded as a real risk events. I put a question mark because I'm going to come back to this question mark. First of all, some of our Canadian colleagues, Rosalie Martel and others, conducted an assessment of the probability of being exposed to virus when consuming contaminated food. They have formulated and tested a number of hypotheses, including the contamination of food of animal origin, contamination of fresh food or other origin, formatives, the putative rule of the human gastrointestinal tract, and contaminated feeds, among others. And they conclude after those estimate of the probability of exposure, they conclude that a foodborne transmission of coronavirus was unlikely to occur based on available evidence, at least in countries, in particular in Canada. There is a similar study in US, Islami and Jalili, by studying the CDC recommendation and going through some of the relevant evidence, also confirmed that food handling, food processing, and food package have no role in COVID-19 transmission dynamics. I should also mention that some of the evidence relate to the food delivery. that to call for the study of the foodborne transmission. So there is one study from Vietnam that based on some cluster outbreaks analysis, they have observed that some cluster outbreaks have occurred in Vietnam, where more than 60% of the infections reported in a public hospital in the capital city, and were found to be linked to further delivery of either pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic or mildly year-long clinical staff working at the hospital cafeteria. And as we have all experienced, social distancing has resulted in high numbers of people ordering food by food delivery, which expose delivery workers to potentially infected customers and could significantly contribute to spreading of the virus. Here, the delivery workers act like the vector. And because of that, it has been recognized to be very important to implement practice like use of personal protective equipment, hygiene, hand washing, and contact-free or contactless-free delivery, digital payments and transactions, and discarding of packages. So there are, again, lots of cautionary measures with, again, substantial costs to certain food processing for delivery industry. So, as I said, especially in the developed countries and high-income countries, the foodborne transmission is considered to be very unlikely to occur. However, according to the review of several exposure assessment analysis based on the precautionary principle, all the food safety agencies have warned that the food safety and hygiene practice and cleaning procedures must be strictly observed and implemented. And so there are a number of procedures that really become routine practice in these COVID-19 areas. Again, they are highly interruptive in terms of socioeconomic activities, and it's another important consequence about all of this. For example, if we believe contaminate plastic surface and contact materials commonly used for packaging can carry the virus, and if we believe they can become virus-free by applying wet wiping techniques, with wipes being properly saturated with alcohol and disinfectants, then there is an issue that was addressed in a letter from Lu and Gao in Science recently, that really this disinfection spreads antimicrobial resistance. And not to mention that in China, according to the reports, that really the disinfection in the port management of infection control has been done very massively. Of course, recently it's been relatively mitigated because of the port employees is top priority for vaccine use. So let me summarize. So some COVID-19 outbreak and infection cluster linked to the contaminated food source have been reported mainly in developing economies and developing countries, territories where proper food practice, such as adequate cold storage food preservation, are difficult and technically challenging to ensure. And there's some weakness in the multi-component chain of food quality and management process. Some food workers, like those working in meat, poultry, process facilities, especially those foreign-born in the developed countries, may be at high risk for contracting viruses. Indeed, the case in Canada. And foodborne or package-borne, despite being real risk events require substantial prevention control measures with significant consequence. So we need a framework to really conduct the package-borne transmission, real risk event, risk identification, modeling, intervention, and cost-benefit assessment. Chris, how much time I have?
Well, I'd say at most 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll go very quick then. I thought I want to do a little bit of analogy between the co-feeding transmission of tick-borne diseases. I do very quick now. So for those of you who are familiar with vector-borne transmission, the systemic infection has been regarded as a dominating route of transmission, like we're thinking now airborne or close contact transmission is dominating route of transmission in the COVID-19. In that case, the host has to be infected systematically, so the virus has been established in the whole body so that any susceptible tick or mosquito biting the host can then get infections through this systemic infection. But there's another important route of transmission, it's the so-called co-feeding transmission. And then all you need is the susceptible vector and infected vectors co-feed the host in a spatially and temporally close proximity so that the infection can pass from the infected vector to the susceptible vector without having the whole host being infected. So this is called co-feeding transmission. There are many different ways of describing this co-feeding transmission. One of the importance is really to try to understand the viral node, the node of ticks or the node of vector on the host. This is more of the infestation dynamics. This depending on how many vector are distributed on a particular host and how many vectors are co-feeding and what's the portion of the vectors are infected. So you would really need a multi-scale dynamics models to link this infestation dynamics to the disease infection dynamics. And this was recently done in terms of tick-borne encephalitis. And there are multiple ways of measure the probability of infection for multiple infected ticks co-feeding with multiple susceptible ticks co-feeding on the same host. So I don't want to go into detail. There is a recent monograph published in the spring series talking about this systematically. I just want to back to, again, the COVID-19. I'm trying to look at this processing or package-borne transmission from this co-feeding transmission angle. So in terms of the co-processing transmission COVID-19, there are multiple stages. The first stage is really how you pack the virus into the package. So there are multiple ways of doing that. You have food processing workers in the exportation side. If they are infected, they can shred the viral load to the contents of the package, the food, for example. And they are also the packaging handling workers, they can also shred the virus to the surface of the package. So, and they are packed the food along with the virus. And then the second stage is transportation, be it by sea, by the air, or just the bus transportation between two, from the farm to the table. Then the package is transported, and there might be some change in the viral load in the package. The virus on the surface might drop out. There might be some cross-contamination with other package, increasing the viral load on the surface. But the viral load inside, especially with the frozen product, preserved under appropriate environmental conditions. And then you move on to the next stage, the receiving zone. They receive not only the package, but potentially a portion of the virus going along with that. And so this has impact in terms of port infection control, but also have significant impact for the food process work in the destination, and which is important because the virus under proper condition for frozen product, for example, can survive for significant amount of time. So the co-feeding process taking place is pretty much like co-feeding transmission in the vector-borne disease. Now you're doing this by co-processing the food. So you have the food process workers put the virus to the food and transport it to the destination, and have full process unpack the food and due to the massive amount of work. I think personal hygiene level probably very low, especially in those countries that have successfully mitigated the contaminated outbreak. So the chance of import virus from one place to another is real, and there are many factors that that impact the probability of transmission, including again the storage condition, the infection control both in the source and in the destination, and the virus survival in different conditions, and in especially the infection control during the unpacking. And you can really write down the probability of new infections from these package handling work and the food processing workers by contact with the virus generated from the packing process, and the viral load is proportional to the viral load of the handling food process workers and packaging workers with some time delay. And so the virus load on the surface and inside, depending on the virus load, and therefore the incidence situations of the importation, exportation areas with delay and with certain survival probability. So this information is possible to be collected. So you might be able to collect the estimate the risk of foodborne transmission through the transportation from the exportation. And I know this is not a big issue in the developing countries and the developed countries, and that's because we have other dominant route of transmission. However, when we are getting the current outbreak under control, then those insignificant route of transmission will emerging to be important. Is they might trick, or is they might be sort of tricking the local outbreaks, and if it's not done appropriately, I think it should be done properly, then the socioeconomic costs is going to be huge. And so there's a window of opportunity for countries, regions, and to develop the technologies, get ready for the time that real risk events will eventually take place. So I stop here, Chris.
Thank you very much indeed, Jianhong. Really interesting to see the way food impacts on all of this, and of course the related issue as we come out of COVID of making sure that we can transport food around safely to people that need it. Right, there's a question in Q&A from anonymous attendee. Were there any checks to see that border control officers / food processing workers themselves are not contributing to the viral load?
Yeah, so that's the really the difficult part is, as far as I know, in terms of the source identification in the couple of outbreaks related to the port city which have recently experienced the local outbreak. So in Jianhong, I know that the monitoring of health status of the port workers very much strict. On the other hand, they have already dedicated the first priority. I think the top priority is to vaccine the port workers. I hope they are also considering vaccinate the food processing workers.
Thank you. Well, there are no more questions, and in view of the time, let me explain what's going to happen next.